Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and welcome to the Gillmor Gang. We've got, I hope, an interesting show today because we're going to be talking, as usual, about whether RSS is dead. And in order to do that, we've convinced Brett Slatkin, the co-author or co-progenitor of Pubsubhubbub, to tell us what's the status of all things speeding up RSS and getting it into the real-time world. And before I say welcome to you, Brett, we also have with us Kevin Marks.
Hi there.
David Ricordan of Facebook fame.
Hey, guys.
And the infamous, I think we're going to call Scoble the intelligible Robert Scoble, as opposed to the intelligible or unintelligible Kevin Marks from last week. So to the transcript writers, I'd like to introduce you to each of these four people, starting with Scoble. Can you say your name, please?
Robert Scoble.
Okay, that's what Robert Scoble sounds like. David Ricordan.
David Ricordan.
Okay, that's what David Ricordan sounds like. Kevin Marks.
I'm Kevin Marks.
That's
who is the 14th most powerful man in British blogging history or something I read.
Or something, yes.
Reporting live from the BBC.
According to the Daily Telegraph, yes.
There we go.
And again, and thanks so much for joining us, Brett Slatkin. Welcome, Brett.
Yeah, Brett Slatkin. So, thanks.
So what's the status?
So the status of speeding up RSS or trying to
hopefully we'll get a little more granular, but
yeah. Things are going well. I think we've seen a renewed interest in the idea of a decentralized web of information flowing between companies without anyone being in control of anything, and so it's that idea is starting to catch on, and fast RSS is a big part of that. So Pubsubhubbub is enabled for over 100 million feeds right now, which is really cool, and more subscribers are coming online pretty quickly, and so it's been really great to see people getting interested in actually writing code, doing things.
All right, so what is Pubsubhubbub? And by the way, we have yet another misspelling of it on our on our lower third. So
yeah,
keeping it in the tradition.
Yeah, sure. So I call it Hubbub for short. It's easier to say. So Hubbub is a protocol that defines a way of subscribing to and publishing feed content in a way that is pushed to subscribers. So to be clear, the current model of RSS is you as a publisher publish content, and ever so often subscribers have to poll you and say, hey, do you have new content? Do you have new content? Over and over they keep polling you. So Pubsubhubbub turns this around, lets a subscriber register their interest in a feed with a hub, and then what happens is every time the publisher has new information, they tell the hub, and the hub goes and tells all the different subscribers. So instead of having to ask, is there new content, the hub comes to you and says, yes, there's new content, and here it is. So it greatly simplifies subscribing, it makes things more efficient, and it lowers the latency of feeds from 1 minute, 5 minutes is kind of the best you could do before. Now you can do it in about 1 second. So it's a really big improvement.
David Ricordan, what's your opinion about this technology and its usefulness or value?
Oh, I mean, I think it's been pretty clear over the past year that as people are doing more interesting things online and sharing more with other people that they know, being able to do that in a more real-time fashion is really important. And so Pubsubhubbub is definitely a technology which helps make that happen. And I think it's something that is going to become a really important piece of infrastructure for the web, of being able to go and sort of shift it. This is an analogy that Brad Fitzpatrick used, who's one of the other authors of Pubsubhubbub, is it's sort of the on a road trip kid in the back seat problem of they're constantly asking you, are we there yet, are we there yet, are we there yet, are we there yet? And Pubsubhubbub allows you to sort of shift that away from somebody constantly asking you if it's time, if there's new content, where you instead being able to say, no, I'll tell you when we're there, which has a bunch of benefits from an infrastructure perspective as well.
Well, what happens when we do get there? Then what? we're screwed, right?
What do you mean? Why are we screwed?
Well, are we there? Are we there yet? I mean, what is the there that we're supposed to get to?
So that analogy was the car analogy. So you have somebody in the back seat asking there, and so you can apply that to thinking about.
You're breaking up in terms of audio. I don't know what's going on. Is it Skype?
Maybe. I'll blame
Getting
Skype.
too excited.
They were just throwing another lawsuit out. Go ahead.
But for content right now, when you're going and fetching feeds, when you're trying to see if someone has created new content, you predominantly have to go and ask. Maybe you ask every 15 minutes, maybe you ask every hour, maybe you ask every 5 minutes. With the real-time technologies, it lets you change that. So instead of you having to ask if something is updated, you're able to say, I care about this piece of content. Please tell me when there's something new.
And if I may add, it's not just tell me if there's something new, but tell me what is new also. That's kind of the distinction here is, it says Hubbub will come along and it'll tell you not only are you there, but like here's what you were waiting for, what you're interested in, delivered right to your door. So.
And that's the distinction between Hubbub and the other notification protocols we've had, like SUP and so on, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's push. So a lot of these other mechanisms lower the latency of distribution, as David explained, telling people, okay, here's a URL that's changed, but they don't actually deliver the new content. And so I call the other way, kind of a ping poll, where it's still polling, but there's kind of a ping first before you have to go fetch the content. And what's changed now is that it's actually content push, like real push. Data is pushed to the subscriber so they don't actually ever have to ask for it at all.
Is that clear, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think there's been a whole series of technologies trying to solve this problem over the years, from changes.xml to ping servers to feed mesh to SUP to sort of unified all the updates from one site type things like 6apart build. I think the key difference here is that this is actually sending the fat ping, the full content of the update, through in the notification. So that makes this protocol a little more complicated in that the server has to do a bit more. On the other hand, it should make the work for the clients at the other end easier because they don't have to do the poll and fetch update. Thing is, most of the feed readers at the moment are already doing the poll and fetch update thing, so it ends up being more work for them. But hopefully, this will be less work for other kinds of clients downstream. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, I think so, and I think also it's important to remember that the goal here is not to solve the present use cases. Feed reading on the web, it works very well right now. It's not necessarily broken, it's just slow, right? So what we're trying to do is speed it up and then enable new apps to be built that have a very fast syndication, and messaging protocol. And so this idea of push is going to become more relevant as the traffic goes up more and more, and as new applications come online from startups and other companies building new cool technology on top of push that wasn't really possible with their feed crawling pipeline and all that other stuff.
Robert Scoble, jump in anytime.
I'm just talking on the chat room with Bob Wyman and other people, and Mike Taylor, who's a CTO at CSMIC, and they seem to be saying that Pubsubhubbub is doing this right. I'm just wondering, is it fast enough to create a real Twitter clone, with hundreds of thousands or millions of people talking in real time, not in near real time, but in actual real time? And I'm wondering if it could be used to build a system like that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and Mike and Bob are both big XMPP guys, and I've had a chance to talk to both of them about Pubsubhubbub and how it relates to the Jabber messaging protocol and Jabber Pubsub, which they both have done a lot with. So can you create an IM style client or something that's as fast as an IM client? Absolutely. In fact, as part of our demo for the real-time crunch up this past July, me and Brad actually built a chat client. So we had a WordPress blog on one side and a Blogger on the other, and we were chatting on GChat or whatever, and we ended up accidentally moving over to the blogs and actually talking blog to blog, him on WordPress and me on Blogger, because it was so fast. It was basically the same difference. So we've actually accidentally started IMing through RSS and Atom and Pubsubhubbub. So yeah, it'll work. It's low latency enough to have actually real-time conversations.
Could you build an infrastructure on like Amazon's S3 or Rackspace's cloud to do this kind of real-time work, or do you have to have dedicated servers to do it?
Scobie, you're setting me up here, man. We actually ran that demo on EC2. So yes, absolutely. And there are hub servers that are in development to run on-premise or in the cloud. Right now, Google runs theirs on App Engine with the reference implementation of the hub, but we want to have more and more people running their own hubs however they want in their data center, and that infrastructure could be used to build that kind of experience on whatever cloud service or hosting service you want to use.
Some people say that the Pubsubhubbub architecture requires a big player in order to be able to implement and to be able to sustain. That if you have 100 million users flowing through this stream, that's going to require some real clout on the engineering side. Is that accurate?
Well, I think that's a fair concern, and I think that that was a fair concern maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And what's changed since then is something called ePOL. And ePOL is an addition to the Linux kernel that's been around in experimentation for probably a decade. And it allows the Linux kernel to scale to hundreds of thousands of connections on a single machine. And I know that a lot of the best performing web servers out there, like Twisted and most likely Tornado too, they use ePOL at their core in order to manage their connections, and that's what allows a single machine to scale to to very large amounts of traffic on a modern Linux kernel. So I think that the tools are there. They're open source for anyone to use. There are similar tools in the Microsoft toolbox. I think that it's out there for people to use. Java app servers can also do it. So I think that people should take a look at ePOL and modern networking substrates and look at the connection limits again and realize that things are new and different.
Kevin, you used to be at Google, and you might have had one answer then. What's your answer now?
Well, I think I've got different answers in different places. The sample client they've built for the sample hub they've built for Pubsubhubbub runs on App Engine, which means that you can deploy it yourself onto your own App Engine instance at Google. I think someone else is building it, has built or is building one in PHP. Have I got that right, or am I getting mixed up there?
Yeah. There's Patrick Brady, who's a Zen framework contributor, is in the progress of writing a full implementation in PHP that people are going to use. And then there's one in Erlang and there's another one in Python that are making progress.
Right. So, you mean plain Python as opposed to Python on App Engine?
Yeah. Sorry. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think part of the point of this protocol is it is possible to delegate the pings across from hub to hub to hub. So you can have a hub that subscribes to another hub, and it can flow through. It doesn't require centralization, and so you should be able to do some kind of fan out with that. But I'm not sure how much of that has been built yet. I think most of the thing that people have built so far has been on the main ping server that Brett's running at Google. Is that fair? Or
yeah, I think a lot of the Google feeds are running on the Google hub, and I know that there are some, like right now I know of some big European publishers that are in the works, and I think they're going to be running their own hub. So I think that I'm encouraging people as much as possible to use their own hub. And there are companies like Superfeeder who are running kind of hub as a service for publishers that want to have more control over stats and that kind of thing. So I think that it's still early days in the world of hubs, and but I'm happy to see two big ones, the Google one and Superfeeder. I'm really happy to see one that's independent and not connected to Google in any way. And I'm especially happy to see people like Patrick writing code that's open source in PHP on the LAMP stack that anyone can run on their Slice host or Rackspace host or EC2.
David Recording, you used to be independent, and now you're at Facebook. Is Facebook going to join this parade, or what do you think is going to happen as far as having some other big players to kind of take the onus off of the large Google penetration around Pubsubhubbub?
I think this is something that's come up with a lot of the different technologies Google has been creating recently. Is like, it's great to see Google go and create these technologies. They're doing a lot of the right things of building a community around them, but I think they do get that stigma of being just from Google and really benefiting Google. In terms of whether or not we're going to adopt a specific technology, I mean, we're always looking at and trying to learn more about new technologies as they come out and how they could really help create better products. But we don't have anything to talk about right now specifically about this technology.
So you don't have any blogs to worry about speeding up?
I mean, I think Facebook has always had, and has really from the beginning, for a lot of services that have gone real time, has had real time features inside of our site in terms of things like newsfeed, being able to go and see it in real time. We definitely do fetch a lot of feeds as well.
And of course, you have FriendFeed now, which does support Pubsubhubbub.
Yeah, and FriendFeed sort of uses that combination. It was brought up in chat a little bit earlier of being able to use both something like Pubsubhubbub and fetching feeds together as two technologies to really get good coverage when you're looking at all the different feeds that you need to interact with.
Brad, Jesse Stay and I'm interested in this too. Have you reached out to Twitter in any way, and have they told you why or why not they would adopt Pubsubhubbub?
Yeah, so Jesse started a thread on their development like news group or a mailing list, excuse me, that was asking for Hubbub support, and they basically said that they're happy with the API as they have it implemented today, which is their kind of take on the streaming API. I understand that they have limited resources. I've been there, so I'm there right now, so I know how they feel. I think that I know that the guys on their team, and I believe Alex Payne, their API lead, they know about Pubsubhubbub. They're aware of the technical challenges of running XMPP or running a web server and supporting their own hub. So I think that they're definitely considering it, and I don't really know what beyond that.
Could you tell me if Twitter was starting today, would they build on Pubsubhubbub, or would they choose their own system to solve maybe some technical challenge that they see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that RSS and Atom are kind of the universal language for kind of getting across time-based data, right? So feeds of information, and the problem is that the distribution of that information didn't have well-defined infrastructure before. So if Pubsubhubbub existed before Twitter built their Stream API or FriendFeed built their Stream API, I would like to think that they would have considered using Hubbub instead, because it could be a common API that all services could provide. So kind of what I'd really like to see, and we have a wiki page on the Pubsubhubbub wiki about Hubbub at Google, and it basically goes in product by product and saying how we could support it. And I would really love to see all those products supporting it, because it's just a common API. So as a developer, it's a lot harder to write one-off code for all these different sites. I'd like to just write my code once and just have it work for everyone. And I think that Hubbub is a great way to achieve that.
Is there any programming mistakes you've seen people do when they're first implementing Pubsubhubbub that you would like to tell them not to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Don't be slow. That's the first one. We're
trying to,
like, if you are a subscriber and it takes you 20 seconds to receive a fat ping, don't subscribe to that much information. I think that people are overwhelmed by the stream, and they don't even realize how much data we have for them. We have 100 million feeds out there. They're changing very quickly. If you sign up for a subscription to something, you're going to get a lot of content. So I think that people need to remember that they should make their code as fast as possible and make their processing code as fast as possible, because the stream is only going to get faster and faster. And that's kind of why something like Hubbub is important, because we need to build really high quality infrastructure so that as the stream gets faster and faster, that we can actually deal with it.
Are there any tricks that you've found to dealing with that, or failing failing properly? Let's say your server gets slow for some reason. Is there something you can do in your code to fail properly so that you don't cause other people problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, the system's supposed to be as resilient as possible against any kind of failures at any part, but hubs should retry delivery. So it's a best effort attempt to be reliable messaging, and so it will constantly try to redeliver a message to you up to some number of times over some time period, on the order of minutes. And so you have a chance to make sure that you don't drop any messages on the floor, which is important. And as time goes on, that'll get more and more reliable. And I know that, for instance, Superfeeder, one of their features is the kind of reliability guarantees that you can get from using them. So they'll say, hey, I'll always deliver the message to you, no matter what happens.
David,
Whereas,
you were going to jump in, David?
Yeah, I was just going to say that these are some of the design decisions that went into the protocol of make it really easy for publishers and easy for subscribers, and make it so that the hubs have a lot of the heavy lifting to do. And that's really just because when you think about how this ecosystem gets deployed, you have far more subscribers and mainly subscribers running on less expensive hardware and not as technically adept as you do for the hubs. The hubs can be really large pieces of infrastructure designed to do this that know how to do it right.
Well, what's the economic incentive for doing it right in this climate? I mean, Facebook has got a business model that is, moving into the black. Twitter, they just got another $100 million of investment and are being valued at, according to the Wall Street Journal of all publications, at $1 billion. There's a lot of money that appears to be orbiting this situation, yet what we're talking about here is a sort of ad hoc, hacker-led, hub system that's being constructed. I mean, where are the economics of this?
I think a lot of the value that you get with these real-time technologies is being able to more quickly and more reliably distribute content that's created within your site, whether that's a blog or a service like Facebook.
Kevin, what do you think? Is BT in this for some reason? J.P. Rangaswamy is assembling a team of geniuses to sort of rework the telecom model and the infrastructure. How are they going to play in this pond?
Well, I think for me this is where the activity streams idea comes in. We mentioned that briefly before. The activity streams is a way of standardizing these kinds of notifications that we're generating in Twitter, in Facebook, in MySpace, in other places like that, and coming up with common terminology so that we can move them from one system to another. And for me, there's a nice part of that in the telephony world as well, because a lot of what you do with telephony is you make calls that have timestamps, you send SMSs, you get voicemails. So there's a nice overlap there between the existing stuff we have and the activity streams models that we have in these newer social systems. And part of that is making sure that we can fit these two ideas together. As we move stuff from, telephony is real time. It requires, by default, it requires you to be talking to the person at the same time. But we have ways of extending that out to these sort of history things as well. So I think there's a nice connection there between the stuff that used to have to be real time but now has a history as well, and these and Pubsubhubbub and activity streams have this model of here's the stuff that's coming now, but you can go back and fetch the feed and get the history of it as well. So the first time you sign up, you tend to fetch the feed and then subscribe to the hub, so that you've got the last 20 or so messages there, and then the new ones will come in real time. So I think there's it isn't an all or nothing. All of these work both ways, and the model that we've built up over the last few years with feeds is fairly resilient and robust at communicating information from one site to another. And the activity streams model is just trying to codify a few more specs around that, so that we can do things like show when you're posting photographs of a person, or sending a link to something else. And codify some of these practices that people have built into Twitter, into Facebook, into FriendFeed.
Well, David, Facebook paid $50 million for that capability. Why Why would you, or why would Facebook want to have that subsumed by an open activity stream system? I mean, what did you spend all that money for?
I think you're actually looking at it a bit the wrong way, Steve. I mean, the value.
I hope so. That's the idea.
The value of these services is, I mean, as Facebook has always said, and as we say, it's being able to connect and share with people that you know, with your friends, and being able to go and use activity streams as a way to understand the type of content that's being created as we might be pulling it in or pushing it out somewhere else, and then being able to do that in a real-time fashion really goes back to that core goal of helping people connect and share.
Okay, so what did you pay $50 million for?
I mean, it's only my first few weeks here.
Yeah. You're just following orders, in other words.
Well, I don't think
seriously. I mean, what's the economic rationale for spending this money? I mean, I can think of a number of reasons, like that the $1 billion valuation of Twitter is actually a stalking horse for the maybe $8 billion valuation of Facebook, as opposed to $4 billion, which is what the current market numbers reflect. I mean, there's something going on here that is being. This is about Twitter and Facebook, with Google, on some level, sort of swarming around them, coming at this, at the value proposition of the activity stream and the filtering that's going to go on around it. I mean, this is big business, evidently. If the Wall Street Journal sends an alert out, I mean, usually the alert is that General Motors is, in bankruptcy. And today's alert was that Twitter is now worth $1 billion. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, one of the most valuable features of Facebook has been the stream. Ever since we launched it, it's a great way to know what your friends are doing and see a lot of that. Earlier this year, we updated the feed to become real time and really show you everything that's going on, along with then the highlights, trying to pull out some more of that. So I agree with you in the sense that being able to see what people that you know are doing is really important, and something that lots of people do every single day. I don't think I'm the right person to talk about exactly why we purchased FriendFeed or not, though.
Well, but you can talk to the fundamental question, because as a technologist, you're interested in scale, in reaching large numbers of people with the capability of being able to use that as a way of generating economic value. However that's perceived at the other end of the value chain. This stuff is clearly moving from Kevin's and your standards body or open standards work. It's moving into some very big players. I mean, the people who are in this investment round with Twitter is it's a mutual fund. I mean, since when do mutual funds get involved in a business that hasn't had a dime of revenue? And the same thing for Insight, I believe it is, which is a private equity firm. I mean, there's something going on here that is substantially different than what we've seen to date. Go ahead.
So Steve, I think what to take a step back and kind of give David a chance to breathe. I think that
good try, but
it's important to remember that that open standards aren't at odds with economic incentives. If anything, open standards are an economic incentive. So the ability for Facebook and Twitter and Google and Flickr and on, all these services, Windows Live, for them all to interoperate, it's really best for everyone, in the same way that the internet itself, through interoperability, was really good for everyone and good for all the companies that participated. So I think that the economics here are easy integration, less engineering effort to put it together, access to more information from all different sources, on and on, and then doing it in a way that's more efficient and scalable, so that going forward we don't have to keep throwing a lot of money at the problem in terms of engineering effort and machines and whatnot. So I think that it's important to think about what we're enabling here. The new use cases, the new apps that will be built on top of Twitter, the new apps that will be built on top of the Facebook stream. that we haven't really considered before that will render a tremendous amount of value for these companies and hopefully get those VCs some of their dollars back.
Well, it's not the VCs that are jumping in now. That was my point.
Yeah, or your 401k, whatever happens to be on the hanging in the balance.
All right, so you're sounding an awful lot like Dave Weiner.
Which part? What sounds like
the part about standing up for the little guy. I mean, that's what I find fascinating about Pubsubhubbub and what Dave's doing with RSS Cloud is that they're not all that different in terms of their goals as well as the technology. Now, you've got a chart that you've put together which explores the differences and similarities between not only those two protocols, I guess, but others like SUP and so on. Can you sort of give us a sort of an overview of what you're trying to accomplish with that?
Yeah, that's thanks. Yeah, so I think that I agree that the goal here is decentralization in the sense that we can all speak the same language and interoperate, and that no one is in control of the data stream completely. And if you think about the internet itself, it was founded on this principle of openness and open protocols, and HTTP and HTML and TCP even, all these protocols were open for people to look at and implement and improve over time. And that's been really valuable to creating the internet and making it the way it is. So, decentralization is at the core of what the internet is and why it's valuable. So one of the other things to keep in mind, though, along with decentralization, is scalability. So you look at the IP protocol, they talk about Vint Cerf and how he helped build it, back in the 60s, essentially. TCP is the same way. So the point is that there are these protocols that have been built over the last 40 years that still hold up today. And now that we're thinking about real time at internet scale, so that maybe my mom will take advantage of real time and beyond how she already does on Facebook, we need to build a foundation that's solid enough that it'll keep kind of scaling. So my document, which is off the Pubsubhubbub wiki, called Comparing Protocols, gets into why polling and ping polling aren't going to be good enough, and why we really need to use fat pinging, which is another term for push, to make this work. And Pubsubhubbub is one fat pinging protocol. XMPP or Jabber PubSub is another one, and they're both have their trade-offs. And so it's really important to understand the technical details of what we're setting ourselves up for. But I think that a simple kind of tagline is, fat pinging, do it for the children. I think that we need to build infrastructure that 40 years from now people will look at and say, okay, that's going to withstand the test of time.
Well, speaking of children, Robert, congratulations.
Hey, thanks. I'll go get little Ryan and bring him up here a little later.
Excellent. So, how's the chat room going? Do you see anything in there?
It's going interesting. We're arguing about whether what Twitter's rules are on rebroadcasting of the Firehose feed, and it's clear that Twitter doesn't allow you to rebroadcast the entire feed, but FriendFeed figured out a way around that, right? They are allowed to rebroadcast anybody who's signed into FriendFeed from Twitter. So if you got everybody on Twitter to sign up for FriendFeed, you would see the full Firehose feed being displayed too. But of course, not everybody from Twitter is going to sign up for FriendFeed. So it's a subset at best.
Let's go up a level and just think about.
Well, that's part of the point. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I mean, I was just going to say, like, there are 5 or 6 of us who are chatting live in real time using video. Well, then another, 20 people are going in also in real time chatting, and we're able to participate back and forth. I mean, Steve, going back to your question about sort of like what's the economic incentive, like this is just completely changing how people communicate. And like that's what's really cool about everything that's happening right now.
I think the economics are going to be interesting because, like, the guys who run big sites like CNN and stuff are really starting to figure out that they're gifting a lot of free advertising to Twitter by saying on CNN, go to twitter.com/CNN. That's a gift of advertising dollars to another brand. And they would love to have their own little Twitter where they could say, go to cnn.com/Twitter and join our Twitter thing. And that way they keep a much better touch point with their customer. And if they could build a system that integrates into Twitter in some fundamentally real way, which is what it looks like this technology will let us do, then all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of economic activity like that.
You were saying something, Kevin?
So I was saying part of the point is that this isn't trying to build the fire hose. This is trying to build the federated thing where you only get the updates that you want to the piece that you're subscribing to. You're not trying to get the entire output of every site and then run stuff over it. You're trying to just say, I'm interested in this subset of it. I'm following these people. I'm following these streams, and I want those to flow through to me rapidly, rather than having to build the infrastructure to read the entire flow from every site and then filter that stuff out. Those are different kinds of problems.
Well,
and the point of this is
it's a philosophical transition as well. I mean, the advantage of RSS was phenomenal, in its inception, because it solved the problem of, the guy on the commercial, the famous commercial where he sits back and says, "Okay, I just finished it." The internet. He read everything. There's no way to read everything, so you have to start to apply, an individual follow architecture to that. And then what Twitter brought in was the ability to be able to, gang up overlapping follow fields, the sort of 3 degrees of separation that comes from not only following the people that you're interested in, but the people that they're interested. One of the algorithms in FriendFeed has that capability of essentially bringing to your attention the comments by the people that I'm following, for example. I see a lot of that. That's Robert's talked about this extensively for a number of years. So you start to develop this social graph view into the information space, which is, I think, extremely powerful, and is really representative of what this transition is ultimately going to fuel, which is a far more efficient and human-powered environment.
The chat room has just raised up a good point. What happens? Let's say you have 100,000 restaurants all using Pubsubhubbub, and they're using a decentralized Twitter-like system to communicate. Is there any way to do a track so I can go through all 100,000 restaurants and look for keywords and have keywords bring back information, or do I have to follow all 100,000 restaurants and then put them into a database of some kind and then do my search that way?
So I think I'd like to address all of these together, because I think you guys are asking the same question in a bunch of different ways. So Kevin's point was that with technologies like Hubbub, it lets you kind of focus in on the topics that you're interested in. And then Steve, you were saying, well, FriendFeed, and Twitter will take your social graph of your friends, and it'll maybe expand that out 1 or 2 more separations, and then it'll let you kind of follow information so your focus is a little bit broader. And then Robert, what you're talking about is having, basically looking at the whole fire hose in some kind of geographical location. So,
well, not geographical. I want to track a keyword. I want to see everybody on these 100,000 restaurants who mentions the word sushi, for instance.
Right, totally. So what I'm saying is that we're kind of defining the spectrum of costs, where for focused engagement, with something like Pubsubhubbub, it'll be very low cost for you to keep track of focused engagement, or even raising the focus, like Steve explained, to grow it a little bit. But it will be more expensive to track the fire hose. And this is true with keeping up with the Twitter feed also. Not everybody can do it. You need a special contract in order to get it. There's a lot of load coming through it, and same thing goes for stuff like the 6-apart atom stream. Not everybody can handle it. So I think that people will handle it, and there'll be companies that want to do kind of track-like functionality, but they're going to need to spend a lot of resources and to be able to handle that stream. And that stream is going to be large, no matter what the underlying protocol is, and it's going to keep getting larger and larger and larger. So what Pubsubhubbub lets you do is kind of pull out more focused pieces of that stream in an efficient way. But you can still get the aggregated view. And something that I've heard people are working on in multiple places is something like the Twitter trending topics, but for the whole internet. So basically, I would subscribe to every single Hubbub feed on the planet, and then watch the data as it goes by, and do track on it, or do whatever kind of analysis you want to do. And there's nothing stopping you from doing that, and you know, and it will work efficiently at scale.
But how does that get built out? You know, a sort of federated track model. I don't think that we've actually heard anybody define how that might work. There was some early talk about that in the Identica days, but I don't see how. You know, all roads are eventually going to lead to, whether it's in memory or not, there's going to be some sort of database of information that is being drawn upon. How do you get there?
Yeah, so I think that you're asking about processing pipelines. So you know, I think that Hubbub will get you the information, XMPP can get you the information. You know, there are a bunch of proprietary solutions like Tibco that will get you data really fast. Analyzing a data pipeline is a lot more complicated. And there are some companies out there, I think one of them is called SQL Stream, that do, and this is kind of the final frontier of database design and SQL, is doing real-time analysis or real-time queries on data as it moves. It's been a research topic for 10, 15 years, as I understand it. It's slowly getting more and more actual kind of investment and build out. But you know, this is a great economic opportunity for entrepreneurs out there to build federated real-time systems, whatever they may be. A use case that's really interesting, I think, is take that 100,000 restaurant example, and now, you know, let's say that someone could get the federated fire hose across all of these different sites and publishing systems and vendors and whatever. And let's say this, you know, it takes 1,000 hubs and 100,000 or 10,000 different hosting providers. Now, I get a federated fire hose. If I want to provide a good user experience, maybe I want, you know, real-time overlay of those reviews depending on my current location. That's a hard problem to solve no matter what you're using for transport, right? XMPP, Pubsubhubbub, or just plain RSS. It's a difficult problem to solve. So I think there will be some really cool apps that people are going to build to handle the information overload. And this problem kind of transcends the deep technical foundation. And if anything, having a strong technical foundation will enable more data to flow and cause more of a need to filter it. So I think that, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what people build to fix that.
Kevin?
Well, Twitter is certainly adding on new metadata to try to help with filtering. You know, they're turning on any day now retweeting, which will work like liking and friend feed, which we know how that helps you filter, right? We can go to friend feed and say, show us all the items about, or with the word Obama in the title that have 15 likes and that have been liked personally by Steve Gillmor. You know, that's really powerful filtering that we don't have on Twitter yet. They're turning on location APIs as well that we're going to be able to search. You know, instead of just saying show me the Hudson River plane crash, we can say show me only tweets within 25 miles of the Hudson River plane crash. That's really powerful filtering that will be available to us in the future. It'll be interesting to see how Pubsubhubbub-based systems deal with that.
So you can do that. The thing is, you can do that today with certain feeds available over Pubsubhubbub and just RSS and Atom. There's GeoRSS, which is an extension to the feed protocols that defines a location tag. There's the via link defined in the Atom spec that a lot of people use to point back at an original, so like a retweet. So I think that all the pieces you just mentioned, although Twitter is going to get the user experience right, definitely, I think that the foundation as a developer is there to build that in a decentralized way.
I'm not even sure that they're going to get the user experience right.
I was going to say.
They're going to piss people off with their new retweet because you can't comment in it, and you know, we have yet to see what it looks like and how it works.
Well, you know, people are using Twitter a lot, and so you know, they must like something about it. And I'm saying that the user experience is probably a big part of that. So I would imagine that they would be able to surface it first, similar to how friend feed kind of had the
whether they
long form
surface
thing
it
first.
or one of their third parties
Yes.
surfaces it. I mean, that's historically that's been truer than Twitter. They haven't needed to do it. It's part of the reason that they've gotten so successful. David, why did you go to Facebook instead of Twitter?
I never even thought about going to Twitter, quite honestly. I mean, I joined Facebook because of all of the really interesting problems that are being solved here and sort of where my interests have lied. I've spent the past few years working on technology around social networks, and where else would I go?
Right. So, I mean, some of these interesting problems you're talking about probably are in the area of UI and how you manage these kinds of opportunities. I mean, we've been talking about it at a large scale, the 100,000 user or the $100 million, but just the ability, I mean, this has been talked about before on the show today, the fact that we're able to use these reasonably and in some cases completely low-cost technologies and be able to wire up something that allows us as individuals to be able to create these, overlapping follow clouds that we can leverage for having real-time conversations. I mean, we all happen to be in the Valley on this call, but it's really no different when somebody comes in from London or anywhere on the planet. So the ability to be able to leverage this at a micro community level, I think, is the real elephant in the room here. And I think what I'm hearing is that the infrastructure is now available to do this in many different ways, which is going to drive an economic kind of acceleration where the cost is driven down and the value is distributed more widely to people in general. So I'm wondering if that's what your vision and understanding is of what Facebook has an opportunity to do, and if that's why you're there.
I'm here. I mean, I completely agree with you, certainly personally, about that. What these tools and what these technologies ultimately enable is people being able to communicate with each other better. And I mean, going back to the example that I gave like 10 minutes ago about just what we're doing right now, of being able to go and have video streaming between 5 or 6 different people, have there be a real-time conversation from a chat room, which I have up behind my Skype window, being able to see all that interact back and forth. This is a really interesting and exciting time to really be able to help influence how the internet continues to develop and move forward.
Speaking of exciting times, we're about to have the debut of RSS. So who is that person?
This is Ryan Sarouche Scoble, RSS, and Rocky's here too. So Rocky will hold the baby. Rocky's a softie. You didn't know that, did you?
He's a Manny.
Anyways, lots of fun in our lives.
So did what did you reach for as your social interface at his birth, Robert?
Well, I used a bunch of different things. I used Friend Feed. I used Twitter to get, because most of my audience is still on Twitter. I used Flickr to get photos out. I used and video, by the way. And what else did I use?
Did you use an iPhone or a flip phone?
iPhone.
A flip cam. Okay.
iPhone, because when you're I was using a 5D as well, so I had a 5D and an iPhone. The 5D is for the high quality video and high quality pictures for my own family album. The iPhone let me get it out, the word get out to the world while it was happening. So,
what I think you mentioned that Sequoia, is that the hospital you were in?
Yeah.
That they were decked out with Wi-Fi, which
they were, but it was like Wi-Fi in China. They had a lot of sites blocked. In fact, a lot of the video sites were blocked, but Flickr wasn't. So,
why were they blocked? Do you think?
Because I think I think they were trying to protect their bandwidth from people who were downloading porn in the rooms and stuff like that. But no, a lot of the media sites were blocked, and a lot of the forum sites were blocked. So I think they were using a standard package that just let people block a bunch of different. It was like a net nanny kind of site, as site block.
Speaking of strange spamming, I got a direct message the other day from somebody. I think this was yesterday, who clearly I had no idea who that person was, and they were trying to sell me something. Has anybody else seen that problem?
I haven't, but I saw a lot of people talking about it. Mashable and other sites had lots of.
What's going on there? It sounds like somebody's figured out how to be able to hack into the direct message network and talk to people who haven't reciprocally followed them. Kevin?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was a phishing attack, so that people you are following are sending messages not under their own name. I thought that was what was going on there.
I see. So I did follow this person even though I didn't recognize the name.
Right. And the message wasn't actually sent by them. They'd clicked on a link, and that link had sent a message.
I understand that. I still think
this is a good example of when you want to have a distributed system that's decentralized, so that not everyone is affected by the same cross-site scripting attack at the same time. So I think Dave was right saying that RSS has no fail whale, because not every front end will be. Oh, there you go. That's good. Not everyone can make the same mistake. People implement things differently, and they have different security implementations. And
so, in other words, we want to have 100 million companies all losing money instead of having.
Well, we don't really know. They're a private company, but we want to have people participating in a stable web and see what follows from that. And I think that requires decentralization and good infrastructure.
Well, I'm not so sure. I think decentralization is oversold. It's kind of like a unicorn. It's like, their exploits are well known, but no one's ever succeeded in capturing one.
Oh, I think if you look at the
nonsense.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
I know, nonsense. The web
by
is
the way, the
decentralized.
Walgreens is open, Kevin.
Inside joke to last week's show.
Yeah.
The decentralized web, is what we built on. That's the stuff that works. Is the protocols that the web is an agreement. That's the phrase Paul Downey put together, which puts it very well. Which is, we agree to use the same protocols to exchange stuff. Therefore, you can interoperate with people, not only without having a business relationship with them, without even knowing they exist, because you're using the same protocol. And that is the power of this, and that's why it scales out to vast dimensions.
Right, it's very easy to join. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand what the logic. I mean, on a simple level, the entire web is completely decentralized. It's about multiple computers connected to each other. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I understand that. But the economics of it and the use of the word decentralized as an alternative to a commercial venture, I think is sophistry. I don't think it exists. I think everything is a commercial venture and everything is decentralized. So what is the point here?
The point is, it's not alternative to a commercial venture. We're not saying there can't be commercial ventures that build on these protocols. Obviously there can be. The point is saying you don't have to first get permission from someone to use it. That's the difference.
Right.
Well, all right, let's follow that logic for a second. What permission? Who do I have to get permission to do anything on the web? When I'm on Gmail, I have to get permission from Google, or else my sign-in doesn't work, and I can't get access to all of my data that's been trapped there for the last 4 years.
I think that Kevin's talking about at a server level. So if I want to run an SMTP server as my own mail host and send email to a Gmail account, Gmail will take that email and deliver it to its recipient. So I don't have to ask them for permission. I just need to speak the protocol and behave correctly.
Right, and I would suggest that the reason that is possible is not necessarily because of some virtuous religion regarding decentralization. It's responsible. It happens because it's good business for Gmail to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Well, these principles go hand in hand. I think that decentralization
Both,
is
yeah.
good for business. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's not an either-or proposition.
not at all.
And
No,
it is sometimes portrayed as that politically, and that's my objection to the use of decentralization as a religion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think that they're usually put at odds with each other. It's but I think that it's more just a question of letting anyone come to the pool and swim or whatever. It's not at odds with a corporate plan or making money. It's actually a way to gain network effects on products so that they grow larger. And so HTML had amazing network effects and got every company involved and ended up growing and growing and growing. So that's why it took off, and it was good commercially for everyone because they kind of got to ride the wave along.
We've lost David. I'm not sure whether or not
I think he had to go.
it's purposeful. Really?
Yeah, he said he had to go, yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks. Well, then let's start to wind this down. Brett, is there any kind of misconception that you feel has been pushed forward about Pubsubhubbub, or conversely, is there anything that you would like to say about some of the other protocols and strategies that are out here regarding this? I mean, this is an opportunity, I think, for you to express something about just the general area, not just your work in it.
Yeah, I think that well, so specifically to Hubbub, I think that there's been a kind of misunderstanding that is.
Let's start again. You're kind of locked up here. Hang on.
And
All right, try it again, please.
you hanging? There we go.
Go
Am I
ahead.
back in business? Sorry about that.
Yeah. You said you were at Twitter. Are they trying to choke your bandwidth?
I'm getting ping flooded. I don't know why.
Okay.
So
Say it again.
I was just saying that there's a misconception that Hubbub is controlled by Google, and that's not true. I think that people need to come and participate in open specifications like activity streams and like Pubsubhubbub with open mailing lists and an open process for getting new stuff added to the spec. So that's a common misconception for me specifically. Generally, I think that people don't understand that light pinging isn't going to work. I think that as a developer, when you take a naive approach and you think about it for 30 seconds, you're like, oh yeah, light pinging, that should work. But if you actually sit down and think through it and think about scalability and remember what you learned about TCP back in your classes or not, you realize that it just won't work. It's just not gonna fly over time. And we kind of need to do strike the right balance between complexity and performance. And I think that I think that light pinging a lot of the time, it seems really simple, but it just doesn't do a good enough job. And so I encourage people to look at some of the things that I've wrote, and there's a long history of this stuff in just protocol design in general for the last 40 years that talks about push and why it's good. And just go out there, read it, and understand that we need to do better, or else we're not going to be able to keep growing the stream effectively.
So I'm hearing two things. One is that you need to have a rigorous, continued influx of new blood, so that this isn't perceived as a special Google project or any kind of big co strategy. But at the same time, you need to be able to take advantage of the heavy lifting that can probably only be done by those kinds of companies.
No, I think that you're misunderstanding the second part. It's not heavy lifting. That's my point. It's the difference between lifting your pinky finger and your index finger. It's really not that much more complicated. But initially, you might say, "Oh, that's more complex," but it really isn't. It's actually very simple. And anybody can do it. You can do it on your $5 a month shared hosting environment with PHP and MySQL. You can even do it on a free host. So I think that anybody can do it. So that's kind of not the problem. The problem is that at the surface, when people first look at Apple and Orange, they think they're they think that something like fat pinging is actually more complicated. And I guess what Hubbub tries to get across is that it doesn't actually have to be. So people who were turned off by Jabber PubSub or any kind of other push protocol in the past should look at Hubbub and other new protocols and say, well, does this make it easier for me? And I think it does. I think that it's easy and efficient. And as for new blood, yeah, we have a lot of new blood coming in, and more new blood is welcome. I want everyone to participate. I get so much great feedback. Like me and Brad both get a lot of great feedback from the whole community and people from different countries and languages and backgrounds and programming languages. It's just really cool, this community that's been growing. And I love when people poke holes in the spec. I love when people challenge the data we're trying to present about why it's necessary.
Give me an example of a hole that was poked and how you fixed it.
Oh, well, the best example, I think, is what Brett Taylor did at FriendFeed. He said, you know what, I'm not satisfied with the security model of how hubs deliver to subscribers. He wanted a higher level of kind of trust that a message received from the hub was authentic. And so he suggested a way to do it, and we went and implemented it, and we went and talked around with other people on the thread, on a bunch of threads on the mailing list, kind of reach a consensus about the way it should work. And then the 0.2 version of the spec added that suggestion to the spec. So, the idea originated with Brett Taylor, and while he was at FriendFeed independently, and then ended up in the spec that we're all working on. So, and it's a great addition to the spec and absolutely necessary.
So, what is the spec that you're all working on, and how are we going to be assured that there's a reasonable level of interoperability among the important players? Great
question. So yeah, the spec is linked off of the Pubsubhubbub website. So if you just search for Pubsubhubbub or pubsubhubbub.googlecode.com, it's misspelled at the bottom there. It has 2 B's. But if you go search for that,
you weren't listening. I said that at the top.
I know. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Real-time error.
Real-time errors. So if you look at there, it's linked off of there. The mailing list is also linked off of there. And as for interoperability, we have a test suite that was written by Jeff Lindsay of Webhooks fame, who put together a way for people to verify the behavior of their hub. And that needs more work too, but the idea is there will be a compliance suite that you can run against your code to verify that it works properly, just like there's a compliance suite for any well-defined spec.
Now, do you think, Kevin, that this is going to get hooked in with some of the activity stream stuff?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, can you explain how?
Well, activity stream is a feed. It's an Atom feed that contains actions, some bit of extra markup to express stuff in more detail. So it plugs in perfectly. You just take the feed and pass it through this system, so that there's no there's no reason for that not to happen at all.
Yeah, it works today.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to ask Brett is, have you looked at hooking up the SideWiki stuff to this? I know that was only launched yesterday by Mikhail.
Yeah. So, and Bob Wyman mentioned on the public thread what would be required to do that. And I think that it would be great to hook that up. I think that there's a whole slew of Google products that we need to put this on, and that's definitely one of them. One of the more interesting ones. I think that making it so that content can be federated and accessed by everyone in real time is really important, or else it kind of seems siloed. And so that's something we need to do, definitely. But I don't know where that's going to be in terms of time frame.
What about an interaction with Wave?
Yes. So that's a good question, and I get that question pretty often. So Wave and Hubbub both do push in terms of content, so it's good for the children, as I was saying. Wave does it in a way that's more complicated because they need more richness to express the amazing user experience that they have. Hubbub is just feeds pushing around, but there's no reason why you couldn't use Hubbub as a transport for Wave data, or vice versa. So
as a replacement for XMPP,
I'm a bit skeptical.
Or alongside.
But there is a difference, right? Because
absolutely, there's a difference. Yeah.
Wave is trying to have you collaboratively edit the same document, so you're sending operational transforms that are effectively edits to the same thing.
Right.
So you need to have that document that you're reconstructing somewhere. So yeah, you could peel it into pieces and push it through Pubsubhubbub and put it back together again, but you still need all the pieces to flow in. So I'm not sure that this is part of the problem with Wave is saying, okay, our structural model is we're all collaboratively editing the same document. It's not here's a flow of events going from one place to another. So that's why it doesn't mesh very well with these systems.
So I think at a user experience level, what you're saying makes sense. But I think that in terms of the actual implementation in the protocol, Wave basically uses Jabber PubSub to move, transforms the document between all the people who are participating. And what I'm saying is that you could do that same transport with something like Hubbub. It would be possible. Now, I think that XMPP is better in that case because it's even faster than Hubbub can be and has a bunch of other nice scaling properties. So that's why Wave has gone in the direction they have, I think. But I'm saying that there isn't an impedance mismatch between the two protocols. You could hook them together.
Okay.
Whereas you couldn't hook together a changes XML file and Wave very easily. That would be a lot more complicated.
Okay.
The ping polling approach doesn't mesh well with push. If you want to get data in real time, you want to push it. That's what I'm saying. Just trying to say.
Okay, Robert, any last question?
Okay.
Not really.
Okay, this is Steve Gillmor. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank Brett Slatkin. I want to thank Kevin Marks. I want to thank David Ricordan. And I want to thank Robert Scoble, and I especially want to thank Rackspace for sponsoring the show and all their fine work, and NewTek and their incredible TriCaster, which is helping us bring this to you. So we'll see you again next time, and there will be a next time. Bye-bye.